Some stories are forged in fire. They are hammered into shape by generations of whispers, heated by fear and cooled by the passage of time. They become as hard and enduring as iron. And in the digital age, these old stories have found a new kind of fire, a new kind of forge: the internet. Welcome back to Vanishing Threads. Today we're traveling to the oldest part of New Orleans, to a street famous for its revelry. But we're not here for the party. We're here for a story that begins in a small, unassuming brick building, one of the oldest bars in America. A place that was once a blacksmith shop, and, if you believe the legends, a front for one of history's most notorious pirates. This is the story of Lafitte's blacksmith shop, and the ghost said to still watch over his hidden treasures. We'll trace this legend from its 18th century origins through historical records and oral traditions to see how it lives, breathes, and evolves in the modern world of online forums, travel blogs, and digital ghost hunts. To truly grasp the legend of Lafitte's blacksmith shop, we first need to excavate the man from the mountain of myth that surrounds him. Who was Jean Lafitte? The simple answer is, we don't entirely know. His name is spelled both Lafitte, double T, and Lafitte, double F, in historical records. His place and date of birth are debated, likely France or the French colony of Saint-Domingue, now Haiti, sometime in the early 1780s. He was a ghost in the records long before he was a ghost in the French Quarter. By 1810, he and his older brother Pierre were established figures in New Orleans. The city they operated in was a world unto itself, an urban island of European culture on the American frontier. Though officially part of the United States since the Louisiana Purchase in 1803, its heart and soul remained stubbornly Francophile. The air was thick with the French language. The streets were lined with the sturdy Spanish-style brick buildings and wrought-iron balconies that had replaced the old French wooden structures after two devastating fires, and its social life was governed by the complex codes of its Creole inhabitants, the locally born descendants of the original European colonists. This was a city of deep contradictions, a devoutly Catholic city with a thriving underworld, a place of sophisticated culture that owed its existence to the brutal labor of enslaved people, and a new American port that still felt like a foreign capital. It was a place where fortunes could be made and lost overnight, and the line between legal and illegal was often blurred. It was into this morally ambiguous, economically volatile environment that the Lafitte brothers inserted themselves. They weren't simple blacksmiths, they were entrepreneurs, and they saw opportunity in the city's complicated relationship with the law. In 1807, that opportunity became a gold mine. The United States, caught in the crossfire of the Napoleonic Wars, passed the Embargo Act, outlawing trade with both Great Britain and France. For a port city like New Orleans, this was a death sentence. Suddenly, legal trade evaporated, merchants had empty shelves, and the wealthy planters of Louisiana, hungry for labor to work their expanding sugar and cotton plantations, were cut off from the international slave trade. Into this vacuum stepped the Lafitte brothers. Jean Lafitte always insisted he was a privateer, not a pirate. And there's a crucial distinction. A pirate answers to no one and attacks any vessel they choose. A privateer is essentially a state-sanctioned pirate, given a letter of marque from a government to attack the ships of that government's enemies. Lafitte and his men sailed under the authority of the city of Cartagena in modern-day Colombia, which had declared independence from Spain. Their mandate was to seize Spanish ships. However, the United States didn't recognize Cartagena's government, and American officials correctly suspected that Lafitte's men weren't particularly selective about whose ships they plundered. From their island headquarters of Grande Terre, a strategic outpost in the swampy maze of Barataria Bay, the Lafittes commanded a formidable enterprise. At its peak, their organization, the Baratarians, numbered over 1,000 people, a diverse crew of sailors, merchants, free men of color, and runaway slaves. They built warehouses for smuggled goods and pens for captured slaves, creating a sprawling, illicit marketplace just outside the reach of American law. Here, merchants and planters could attend auctions for everything from silk and spices to human beings, all for a fraction of the legal price. Now, what about the Blacksmith shop on Bourbon Street? The historical record is murky. While a blacksmith named Lafitte was mentioned in an 1802 newspaper, there's no first name and no link to this specific building. The story likely originates from a more tenuous but plausible connection. Pierre Lafitte's mistress owned a building on St. Philip Street, just across from the shop we know today. It's possible the brothers used it as a meeting place, a convenient city office for their swamp-based empire. The idea of it being a literal blacksmith shop, a front for their operations, is almost certainly a romantic fiction, a piece of folklore that has become more real than the truth. This complex, morally ambiguous world was shattered by the War of 1812. When the British set their sights on New Orleans, they saw Lafitte not as a criminal, but as a powerful potential ally. In September 1814, they offered him a captain's commission and a small fortune for his loyalty. Lafitte, in a stunning pivot, chose a different path. He sent the British packing and dispatched a warning to the American authorities in New Orleans, offering his men, his cannons, and his intimate knowledge of the bayous to help defend the city. In exchange, he asked for a full pardon for his Baratarians. At first, he was rebuffed. Governor Claiborne and a young General Andrew Jackson distrusted him, with Jackson famously calling him and his men a hellish banditti. The US Navy even proceeded with a planned attack on his Grande Terre base while the negotiations were ongoing. But as the British fleet drew closer, Jackson realized he was outmatched. He needed Lafitte's cannons, his ammunition, and most importantly, his expert cannoneers. He swallowed his pride and accepted the pirates' offer. During the decisive Battle of New Orleans in January 1815, the Baratarians' expert gunnery was a critical factor in the stunning American victory. The pirate had become a patriot. True to his word, President James Madison granted a full pardon to Lafitte and his men for their crimes against the United States, but the life of a law-abiding citizen didn't suit him. Lafitte eventually returned to smuggling, setting up a new base in Galveston before the US Navy forced him out in 1820. After that, he sailed into the mists of the Gulf of Mexico and into legend. His final resting place remains one of history's great unsolved mysteries. From this point, the historical record falls silent and the folklore takes over. For centuries, the stories of Lafitte's ghost were local whispers, passed between residents over drinks in the very bar he supposedly haunts. But the internet gave these stories a global stage. Today, Lafitte's Blacksmith shop is one of the most documented and discussed haunted locations in America. And as the stories have spread online, they have also grown more specific, more detailed, and more strange. The central figure, of course, remains Jean Lafitte himself. According to numerous accounts documented on paranormal blogs and tour company websites, his spirit is not a fleeting shadow or a cold spot. He reportedly appears as a full-bodied apparition, a phenomenon considered rare in paranormal circles. He looks as solid and real as any living person, dressed in the garb of an 18th century sailor or privateer. For the most part, he is a passive observer. He never speaks. He simply watches the patrons and staff with an unnerving stillness, most often from the dark corners near the massive, ancient fireplace. When he is noticed, when someone makes eye contact, his form is said to dissolve back into the shadows. However, some online anecdotes add a more interactive and frankly cheeky dimension to his haunting. A recurring story claims that female patrons, particularly in the women's restroom, have felt a sudden, unexplained pinch, an act attributed to the roguish spirit of the pirate himself. But Lafitte is apparently not alone. The digital folklore has introduced a second entity, one with no clear connection to the building's verifiable history. On the second floor, a female spirit is said to reside. While some online sources repeat an unverified rumor that she was a resident who took her own life in the building in the 1890s, there is no historical evidence to support this claim. Unlike the silent, watchful ghost of Lafitte, this female entity is described as being much more interactive. Her calling card is auditory. Visitors who venture upstairs, often finding themselves alone in the quiet, dimly lit rooms, report hearing a woman's voice whispering their own name directly into their ear. It's a personal, invasive form of contact that leaves a much deeper chill than a fleeting glimpse of a shadow. Finally, there is the most sensational and unsettling element of the modern legend, a claim that seems purpose-built for the age of online creepypasta. It is a phenomenon separate from the ghosts of Lafitte or the Whispering Woman. It has no body, no voice, no historical anchor. It is simply a pair of piercing red eyes. These eyes are said to materialize in the darkest corners of the bar, floating in the oppressive, candle-lit darkness. While some accounts place them near the ceiling, many specifically tie them to the ancient fireplace on the ground floor. They are said to glare out from the blackened hearth, staring unblinking at visitors. Some online storytellers have woven this detail into the older legends of Lafitte's treasure, speculating that this entity is not a ghost, but a guardian, a less-than-friendly presence protecting a secret cache of pirate gold hidden somewhere within the chimney's brickwork. Other paranormal investigators online dismiss this theory, claiming the eyes are the mark of a demonic, non-human entity. This assertion represents a significant escalation of the original tale, transforming a classic historical haunting into something far more terrifying and far more suited to the viral dynamics of the modern internet. What we are witnessing here is the 21st century folklore engine in action. The internet has become a digital forge, hammering old legends into new shapes. The process is driven by a powerful feedback loop. A visitor reads a blog post about a whispering woman before their trip to New Orleans. They visit the bar, and in a quiet moment, a creak of the floorboards or a trick of the wind is interpreted through the lens of that story. They go online and post their own account, confirming the legend and adding another layer of anecdotal evidence. Their story is then read by the next visitor, and the cycle continues. This dynamic also fuels a kind of narrative escalation. In a crowded digital space, stories have to compete for attention. A silent, melancholy ghost is interesting, but a whispering spirit who knows your name is more personal, more chilling. A pair of glowing red eyes attributed to a demon is pure, high-octane nightmare fuel. It's a story that is more likely to be clicked, shared, and retold. Each new, more dramatic element is forged in the fire of online discussion, adding a layer of modern horror onto a historical foundation. The core story of the pirate's ghost remains, but it is now encased in new layers of folklore, created collaboratively and anonymously by the internet itself. This evolution reveals something profound about the architecture of belief in the digital age. The physical environment of the bar itself is the perfect incubator. It is genuinely old, authentically dark, and lit almost entirely by candles. This atmosphere primes the senses for a supernatural experience. Our brains are hardwired to find patterns, a tendency called apophenia. In the flickering, low-light environment of Lafitte's, apophenia goes into overdrive. The human mind excels at finding faces in shadows, a form of apophenia called pareidolia, and interpreting random noises as intentional sounds. A gust of wind becomes a whisper. A settling floorboard becomes a footstep. The environment creates the raw sensory data. The legend provides the script for interpreting it. This is amplified by the psychological principle of ostension, a term folklorists use when people begin to enact the narratives they consume. Visiting Lafitte's hoping to have an experience is a form of ostension. The legend shapes the visitor's perception, filtering every shadow and sound through the stories they've read online. The most powerful anecdotes, like the ghost whispering a visitor's name, leverage an even deeper cognitive bias: subjective validation. An experience that feels personal and specific is perceived as more real and more convincing, even if it's a common trope in ghost stories. The feeling of being singled out by the supernatural is a powerful validator, making the story intensely personal and highly shareable. These personal experiences are then uploaded into the powerful echo chambers of online paranormal communities. When a visitor posts their story, they aren't met with skepticism, but with enthusiastic validation from a self-selecting group of believers. This creates a potent confirmation bias loop. Each new story reinforces the validity of the last, building a shared, collaborative reality where the existence of these entities is taken for granted. The standards of evidence are not historical or scientific, they are social. If enough people believe it and share it, it becomes real within the context of that community. What we're seeing is not just a ghost story, but a complex interplay of history, architecture, technology, and human psychology. It's a powerful demonstration of our innate, and perhaps increasing, need to find mystery and enchantment in a world that often feels hyper-documented and mundane. The legend of Lafitte's provides a direct, tangible link to a more romantic, dangerous, and mysterious past. A past that, for the price of a drink, we feel we can touch. The story persists and grows, not just because it's scary, but because it fulfills a deep human need for a world that is bigger, older, and more mysterious than our own. So, what can we say for certain? Is Lafitte's blacksmith shop truly haunted by a pirate, a whispering woman, and a demonic entity with red eyes? If we adhere to the strict standards of historical proof, the case is thin. The connection between Jean Lafitte and this specific building is tenuous at best, a romantic fiction that has hardened into accepted fact. The stories of the woman and the red-eyed entity have no historical basis at all. They are phantoms born of the digital ether. But if we look at this not as a historian, but as a folklorist, the answer changes. From that perspective, the haunting is unequivocally real. The internet has become our planet's nervous system, a sprawling, chaotic digital campfire where stories are not just retold, but remixed, amplified, and transformed. The legend of Lafitte's blacksmith shop is a perfect case study. It demonstrates that folklore is not a relic of the past. It is a living, breathing process that is happening right now, all around us. Whether the whispers and shadows in that old bar are genuine paranormal phenomena or the products of a collective creative feedback loop is, in some ways, beside the point. They have become part of the legend's DNA. The story is no longer just about an 18th century privateer. It's about our modern relationship with the past, about our need to find mystery in the mundane, and about our timeless desire to tell and retell a good ghost story. The blacksmith's forge has gone cold, but the forge of folklore, now powered by servers and fiber optics, burns hotter than ever. Thanks for tuning in, and until next time, stay curious, stay safe,